Welcome to the Energy Mixx Radio Show, where we spotlight the leaders shaping the future of energy, innovation, and community impact. Today's episode features a trailblazer who is redefining what it means to lead a legacy utility into a new era. Joining me again is Rudy Garza, the president and CEO of City Public Service Energy. The subject of his recent SHALE Magazine cover story that dives deep into his journey, leadership philosophy, and the bold moves reshaping San Antonio's energy landscape. From launching Vision 2027 to exceeding a $1.387 billion acquisition of natural gas assets near Houston, Rudy's leadership blends operational excellence with a deep commitment to the community, innovation, and long-term resilience. And today, I'm going to explore how his values and vision are powering CPS Energy's transformation and what it means for the future of Texas energy. Rudy, you are the first Hispanic CEO of CPS Energy, the largest municipality-owned electric and gas utility in the United States of America. You have over 25 years in the industry, and you've also led CPS through a period of bold change, which we're going to get into in the show, which included major rate case changes and the launch of Vision 2027 and a landmark acquisition of 4 natural gas plants in the Houston area, as I mentioned earlier. So let's bring you on, talk about your journey from Corpus Christi to being one of the most top influential energy organizations in Texas. And this has been due to your leadership, your authenticity, your community service, and I believe your clear-eyed view of the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead for CPS. So welcome to the Energy Mixx Radio Show.
Thank you, Kym. That is quite the introduction, and as always, I am very, very honored to be a guest on your show today.
You know, Rudy, you are, I have a lot of people that I look up to, but you are one that to me is extremely, I'm very proud of your journey. And one, because one, we got to tell that story. Two, to understand that you're the first Hispanic. And as we get into the show, talking about your challenges that you faced that many people don't realize until we get into the show, that at the time you were handling all of these catastrophic things that were happening, you were you were interim CEO.
Yes, ma'am.
You were still in a testing phase. So these are big shoes to fill. And I just think that you are one of the most inspiring people that I know of how you have truly shown that you have what it takes to lead CPS and making big moves with it. So talking about big moves, let's get into it. You guys, well, under CPS Energy, you created an acquisition or closed on an acquisition that was $1.387 billion in an acquisition of 4 natural gas plants near Houston. So my first question is, what made this deal so right for San Antonio and its future that you moved on this deal?
Well, Kym, I'd start by saying, we have a generation strategy that we developed as soon as I became CEO. November marks 4 years now, if you can believe that I've been CEO. That they named me interim in November of 2021, and by August of the following year, the board saw enough progress that they gave me the opportunity to be the permanent leader here. And we had a lot of work to do at that time. And one of the things that we had to do was move past a number of old units that needed to be retired, natural gas, primarily gas steam units that needed to be retired here in and around the San Antonio area. And we had to make a decision about what we were going to do about the coal units. And, so between retiring our old gas units and converting at least one of our coal units from coal to natural gas and retiring the other one, we came up with a playbook. And that playbook said that, transitioning away from the old stuff was about 3,000 megawatts of generation capacity. We needed to replace that with 6,000 megawatts of capacity. So, and that included all of the above: gas, natural gas, solar, wind, and battery storage. We're still number one in the state of Texas in solar. We're number 2 in wind power. We will be number one at some point in time in the near future on battery storage, and of course natural gas. As you know, we're in the state of Texas. Natural gas will always be part of the mix. As it comes to how power is generated in this community. I mean, in this state, and so we had an opportunity. We got invited by the owners of those plant assets, to negotiate on a potential purchase. It was within the confines of the generation plan that our community had provided input on, that our board approved. And so from a transparency standpoint, we were just doing what we told the community we were going to do. And so from that standpoint, I'm really proud of the fact that we were able to get that deal done. Between the Corpus and Laredo assets that we bought last year, which have been a home run, transaction for us, and now these gas plants, we've really moved our gas strategy forward, continuing to focus on diversification, but we've been able to save our customers billions of dollars in acquiring these assets versus what it would have cost us to build. This transaction alone saved our customers over the long term $2 billion. My job as CEO is to be as reliable a utility as we can possibly be at the most affordable cost. And it's opportunities like these that when we're able to execute on them, that's how we keep our rates low.
Absolutely. And Rudy, most people understand, they're hearing all these big data centers and AI, and how are we going to output to them? And you are building the energy for the citizens of San Antonio and pretty much surrounding counties. This is a big job doing that. And so when people hear perception wise, we don't have enough for all of that, how are we going to do that? There's something that we can look at here in San Antonio, that you are looking to the future and making sure that we have enough demand that we can power what we need. This is part of this diversification and transition. And I just wanted our listeners to understand that, because I think that a lot of listeners just think that this is, oh, well, you just flip a switch and the lights come on. But we're going to talk about Winter Storm Uri a little bit later on in the show. And we're going to go back and revisit why what you're doing right now is so vital and important. Let me try to drill down a little bit on this new acquisition. So these assets that you guys acquired, they're designed as peaking plants.
That's right.
Can you walk us through how they will be used to stabilize the grid and how to meet demand during critical periods? Because we're all hearing conserve certain hours of the day when it's super hot. We know that, but do we know what that means? So tell us what peaking plants are.
Well, so I'll take a step back. The way the electric utility industry has worked historically is you build a 4, 6, 800 megawatt unit, a big baseload plant that's intended to run all the time, right? And you earn your return over 50-year life of the plant because you expect that plant to run all the time. Well, you really only, in today's market, we only use the full capacity that's available in the market, certain times of the year. The summer, obviously, in the evening hours, and then of course in the winter, primarily in the morning hours, is when you need to really kick on what we call those peaker plants to meet the periodic peak that pops up, not the general usage that our customers, between, in the summertime, between, 6 a.m. when people start waking up and 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the usage is nominal. It's 3 o'clock to 8 o'clock at night that you really got to kick on, everything that you've got to be able to manage the capacity in the market. And so going forward, I think the investment is going to be less in those baseload type plants, the big units that you take on more risk. You take, you're more subject to the performance and the price in the market on whether or not those units will pay for themselves. Buying peakers allow you to really take advantage of that peak, need in the market when it's necessary. So peakers aren't intended to run, 100% of the time, although they can if you need them to. They're really intended to run during those critical hours when the price goes up. You have an opportunity to make some some a return on the market, but we bought them really for reliability of the resources we need in San Antonio. So our drivers are a little bit different, even though we're going to make wholesale revenue for whatever power above and beyond what San Antonio needs. That goes towards offsetting what we have to ask our ratepayers for. So every dollar we bring in from the wholesale market, we sell power that we aren't utilizing back into the ERCOT market, is one less dollar we need to ask our customers for. And that's another way we keep rates low.
Yes. So you're even supplying power to more people in Texas, even though they're not in our demographical area to sell to ERCOT or
That's
to
right.
have ERCOT sell.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Kym, we're the fourth largest generator in the state of Texas. So we have more generation than we need. We're really good operators. We know how to run power plants. So, the fact that we own more assets than we need to serve San Antonio is a net benefit to the market. And guess what? We're also a tax exempt entity. So the price it costs the market is also lower, at the end of the day, because we're a public entity. So it's almost like, here's how I would describe it. The wholesale market in ERCOT, when you have some public power, the good majority are private companies that are doing their job, every day, but a portion is public sector companies. It's like having mutual funds and stocks in your financial portfolio. It's a good hedge to make sure that you're diversified, right? Well, that's the public power seat, serves to diversify the ERCOT market so that you have multiple types of entities that help kind of manage the risk overall for our customers across the state of Texas. So it's a good thing for CPS Energy to be active players in the wholesale market.
Absolutely. And I want to revisit that a little bit later on in the show when we talk about Winter Storm Uri under your interim CEO leadership. But that's a little bit later on down in the show. Let's take a quick break. When we return, Rudy, I want to ask you, that you emphasized that this acquisition was to avoid building new infrastructure. So let's get into that, but let's take a quick break. You're listening to the Energy Mixx Radio Show, and we'll be right back. Okay, here we go. And we're back. You're listening to the Energy Mixx Radio Show. My guest today is Rudy Garza, the President and CEO of City Public Service Energy in San Antonio, Texas. Rudy, we were discussing this acquisition, this billion-dollar acquisition that CPS finalized, and you emphasized that this acquisition helped CPS avoid new building infrastructure. How does this strategy align with your long-term goals and for cost efficiency and reliability? Were those some of the things you were looking at?
Well, we're going to have to build new plants at some point in time. I'm getting as much affordable solar and wind and battery storage as I can possibly get into our system. Because here's the thing, even with these acquisitions, we're going to grow into this capacity, right? So as I'm taking old plants offline, I cut into this new capacity that I'm buying. As our community grows, I'm cutting into this capacity that we're buying. So so you don't build a plant, when you need it. You got to plan to build a plant 5, 6, 8 years ahead, 10 years ahead of schedule of when you expect the growth to be here, so that you're ready to serve the customers that are coming. So for us, we're always looking at, is there capacity available in the market today that's good, that's the right kind of capacity that will allow us to get more megawatts online at a quicker pace at a lower cost, right? Mm-hmm. Let me give you for instance, the plants that we bought in the Houston area we paid $450 a kW for. Don't worry about the units, just focus on the number. $450 a kW. Do you know what it would cost us to build that same amount of capacity per kW?
I would guess
$2,000 to $2,500. So
I'm going to say three times.
So buying that capacity, we're still going to need to build, but we push that build off a bit while we see how the growth shapes up. There's a lot of uncertainty around data center load, for instance. So over the next 5 years, we'll learn how those customers are going to come online and exactly how much capacity that they're going to need. And that lets us reduce the risk of speculatively overbuilding capacity right now, right? So our options always is there available capacity in the market, and how does that compare to what it's going to cost us to build? We've got owners, engineers on staff. We're running, projects to plan for when those builds happen. It's just pulling the trigger on ordering the turbines and doing the things that we have to do to get ready for the build that we're able to hold off on because we found a less risky and more cost effective way to do it. That's just good business.
Absolutely. I want to go back, and I know we're going to cut in on break here at some point, but I want to go back in history for a moment because this really, to me, this past that we're going to visit really demonstrated you as an individual. And I love this story. When Winter Storm Uri devastated Texas in 2021, and you mentioned you were brought on board November 2021 as interim,
Yeah.
you faced one of the most severe operational and financial crises in CPS's history. Being again newly appointed as the interim, you stepped into a storm, definitely, literally and figuratively. And you began to steer the utility through recovery with a very steady hand from what now we look back and see. I don't know if you believed it at the time because there's no playbook for what you went through. But your response included securing fuel cost recovery, stabilizing operations, and initiating a long overdue rate case to fund infrastructure resilience, which we're seeing now. And these early decisions laid the foundation for a broader transformation into Vision 2027 and Horizon 2050. Strategic plans that prioritized reliability, modernization, and community engagement. Would you say that's pretty much right? What I've
That
been
is
saying this far?
exactly what we did. Yes, ma'am.
So, looking back, your leadership appears to not only be reactive, but remarkably precise. And with your recent $1.387 billion acquisition of the natural gas assets near Houston, it reflects a very pragmatic approach in your grid stability and how you looked at it, even to the point where you still invest, like you mentioned earlier, in renewables. And speaking about renewables, the Sierra Club upgraded CPS from an F, failing, to a C, which is signaling progress. And through this, it highlights the tension that you go through between environmental goals and operation reality, balancing both. Your trajectory shows a leader who does not chase trends, in my opinion, but builds durable solutions, balancing long-term vision with the immediate need for growth of a growing city like San Antonio. And I want to drill down into specifically that time, but I'm going to have to, unfortunately, break. And when we return, I want to get into this. You're listening to the Energy Mixx Radio Show, and we'll be right back. Okay. So, Rudy, looking back on Storm Uri and your decisions that you made in the aftermath, tell me how you felt you looked at this in the direction of CPS. Like, were there some key things? This was, no one knew. I've interviewed Commissioner Craddock, so many people that were dealing with a storm they've never dealt with before. There's no playbooks. We completely lost power in the state for days. How do you feel looking back as the leader of CPS? And by the way, interim at that time, very short period of time on interim, but had worked for CPS for many years. What was guiding you and leading you?
Well, a couple things. I maybe it's the best time and the worst time to be asked to step into a leadership role. Our community, lost trust in us. And I started from that place. I leaned into the repair of the relationship with our customers that we had to start from. And I took a real simple approach, Kym. I got my number one. None of it happens without my employees, my leadership team rallying around me. Had my team members not been there in the trenches with me at that time,
Mm-hmm.
there was no way we were going to have any success. But I asked one simple question when they named me interim: what can we reasonably get accomplished over the next 12 months, assuming I'm going to have a year to try to put these things back on track? Let's get a list together of the things that we need to accomplish. And so we went to work. We needed to put a plan together. We did that. We put a generation strategy together that transitioned into Vision 2027, which created the playbook, with community input. So boom, now we had priorities that we could go and start talking to the community about. That led to the fact that we hadn't had a rate increase in San Antonio in over 9 years. There's no way we could have dug ourselves out of that hole.
Who gets that?
Yeah,
I mean, for a listener who's in Houston or Corpus, their rates, they're lucky they stay if they have them for 1 year or even 1 month.
That's
9 years, no increase for the
right.
citizens of San Antonio.
Yeah, for us, we got to go to the city council to get that approved. So, they thankfully, city council understood the financial condition that we were in. We'd already been moved to negative outlook by our bond rating agencies. And so, they approved a modest rate increase that allowed us to deal with the fuel costs associated with Winter Storm Uri. That was a $1 billion price tag that we're still working through, quite frankly, with a couple of those suppliers. And it allowed us to start funding infrastructure improvements. We had to start investing in our core business again. And you can't do that without rate support.
Absolutely. I'm sure we're okay. So we're now back. Okay. Rudy, when the storm went down, can you also explain to us, everybody had a spike, an increase in their utility bill. CPS also endured some significant financial losses. Can you explain that as well? Remind us what you all went through, because that also came into the playbook you're talking about, that the rate increase, but also the financial significance that Storm Uri had on city public service.
Well, look, I mean, in the natural gas industry, anytime there's a winter storm, you'll see a fairly significant increase in the spot price of natural gas. And in that moment, you pay what you have to pay because you got a gun held to your head because you're trying to keep, customers warm, right? And so we were in this catastrophic moment that, that's not normal business. And so every gas utility, every gas generator in the state of Texas faced significant financial, implications because of the nature of that storm. So the way, here's what happened in Houston. Some customers in Houston got a $10,000 bill from 1 month to the next because all that gas cost got passed right along to customers, which is allowed. Just because it's allowed doesn't mean it's right. What we did is we parked all that cost. We went to our council, thoughtfully came up with a plan to spread that cost out over 25 years. And we created a regulatory asset so that customers pay a little bit a month over a long period of time rather than pay it all at once. The easiest thing for us to do would have been to just pass it on through, but it would have been absolutely unacceptable by our customers, by our community to allow that. So the manner in which we went about addressing that significant event, I thought was very responsible. Now we're still in litigation with a couple of those suppliers. That will work itself out over time. But that was a decision that our community made in that moment that, hey, how can you allow a hotel room, a La Quinta, to get taken to court by the attorney general for moving from $75 to $150 a month, but you're going to allow gas suppliers to increase their costs 15,000%, in the middle of a storm, so, there's a principle of the issue that we're fighting still. And you know what? Maybe we lose. I don't know what's going to happen in the litigation, but, worst case scenario, we pay what we owe based on, that event. Best case scenario, we create some new policy that I think benefits consumers at the end of the day. So, I'll let whoever's making the judgment decide whether, who has the high road on this. But I think the fight that we're fighting right now on this issue is worth fighting.
I don't think anybody could not at least appreciate the sentiment and the thoughtfulness behind that, because keep in mind, this is also right around the catastrophic COVID debacle as well. I mean, we are literally just hitting all kinds of serious issues in the home environment, financial, everything. So let's switch gears and talk about not being able to please everybody all the time. And that would be the Sierra Club. Now, I
That is
mentioned
the
earlier,
existence I live, Kym, is not being able
yes,
to please everybody all the time.
exactly, but you just got to try, right?
Yeah.
And so the Sierra Club, who had CPS Energy rating from an F to a C, what does this shift mean to you? And how do you reconcile the environmental expectations with the need for reliable, dispatchable power for the city of San Antonio and now even Texas needs?
Well, let me start with this. Our community in San Antonio does have a climate action and adaptation plan that was passed by the city of San Antonio, back in 2018, 2019 timeframe. That says we'll be carbon neutral in our emissions by 2050. And our current plan, the generation plan that was approved with community input, which included many of the environmental community, created the pathway forward with this diversified portfolio that will allow us to meet our 2030 and 2040 target interim goals, while we work on new technology that'll get us to 2050. So we're on a pathway to lower our carbon footprint, which should make generally, our environmental community, I think, is committed to, and we're committed to. The main thing as part of that plan was to move away from coal, and we made that decision. And there are financial ramifications of us doing that. With the new administration, this year we're actually going to look. We're going to update our generation plan to see what's changed, and certainly some of the action by the administration on allowing or not allowing coal plants to close early. We're going to have to take that policy into account and see what that means for our plans in terms of transitioning both to the unit or units to natural gas. Fundamentally, I would never expect environmentalists to be supportive of any kind of fossil fuel based generation. So the fact that we're still at a C, I'm not surprised at that. What I am proud of, though, is we have stuck to our commitment to move away from coal, which was their biggest issue.
Right. Mm-hmm.
We're number one in solar in Texas. We're number 5 in the country. We're number 2 in wind in Texas, and we're committed and moving the needle forward on battery storage. So we're doing all the things that our environmental community wants us to do to decarbonize our fleet. But natural gas, for reliability purposes, natural gas will remain part of the equation. And
Absolutely.
that I don't get to do all the cool stuff on new technology and decarbonization if my service isn't reliable and as affordable as it can be. So I got to do those two things first before I can get to the goodness of a more sustainable portfolio.
Okay, let's take a quick break. When we return, I want to drill down a little on the fuel end of it, because this is my show of we talk about mostly oil and gas and the need for that as well. So we're going to drill down. Let's take a quick break. You're listening to the Energy Mixx Radio Show, and we'll be right back.
Okay.
And we're back. You're listening to the Energy Mixx Radio Show. My guest today is Rudy Garza, the president and CEO of City Public Service Energy. Rudy, before the break, you were discussing how you have positioned City Public Service to be very, I think the philosophy is all the above. So we have solar and wind. You mentioned how Texas leads in this area and you lead in this area. But not too long ago, when we had Storm Uri, we also realized that, I interview energy, oil and gas specifically, a lot of experts in that field, and we know what happened in that storm. Natural gas was cut off from the pipelines, which shut everything off. And we saw that solar and wind, as much as some people like this, and I'm not against it either, it is not a perfect energy source, because if the sun isn't shining or the solar panels get snow on them, which is what happened, or these wind turbines froze their motors, and it led to the catastrophe that we had. And your philosophy of investing in all of it and getting off of coal, which I am in agreement in that. But let's talk about fossil fuel, the reliability, and also talk to the listeners about nuclear, because that's another fuel source that we can look at. And there's some great ones coming down the pike, geothermal, that CPS could look at. I mean, there's a lot of good ones. It's not just solar and wind. So talk to me about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, Kym, I don't spend a lot of time vilifying one resource type over another. because you have to have it all. And I think we're a
Right.
really good example of being committed to an all of the above strategy. We are 40% owners in the South Texas nuclear plant, in Bay City, and with our co-owners with Austin Energy and Constellation, and that plan is a great plan. But guess what? During Winter Storm Uri, every resource type had an issue. We're operating under different standards today. We have to weatherize in a different way, and we get inspected now by ERCOT folks, to make sure that we've done all the things that we have to do to protect the plants from a harsh winter potentially. So yeah, I mean, the reason natural gas and nuclear, I mean, I'll tell you, we can't make our 2050 decarbonization goal without new technology coming into play that doesn't exist today. And I personally think that new technology, the bet on the new technology, is going to be small modular nuclear reactors.
Absolutely.
Daisy chain
You bet
together,
it. You bet.
and move those forward. So nuclear, I think, is going to play a big role in the future of our industry. Natural gas will have to remain, part of a big part of the mix, because it provides the reliability we need. There are times of the year when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. That's okay. That's not a reason to not invest in those technologies. Battery storage helps ensure that that you have the backup you need during those times to bridge those gaps. But during Winter Storm Uri, it was an anomaly because all resource types failed us in certain ways in that moment that we've learned from. So we have a more resilient system today because all of the resource types have continued to be invested in. And guess what? With all the growth coming, the phenomenon that continues to be the Texas economy, you're going to need every electron you can put on the system to keep up with the growth that we're experiencing right now. So now's not the time to pick one resource type over another, because we just need it all. And that's going to be that way for the next 5 to 8 years. We need battery storage. We need solar. We need more wind. And guess what? We need more gas too. The other thing that doesn't get talked about, Kym, is the old gas plants in ERCOT need to be retired because they are not reliable and they cost a lot to run. So the quicker we build new stuff to replace the old stuff, guess what? That has a carbon benefit too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they're so efficient, the new build out with technology versus the old ones. Um, let's talk about Vision 2027. It has been the cornerstone of your leadership. What are the key pillars? Tell us about that and your vision. And then how does it fall into this acquisition? How does it fit into your roadmap? Because this acquisition wasn't something you really planned. It was something that just it was one of the Lord's gifts to you
again,
in some ways.
It was part of the plan. It's just the time horizon in which you can execute to it. We're able to execute at a quicker pace because we're buying instead of building what we were going to build, which takes a little bit longer. So it's all within the plan. We're actually updating the plan right now because we're about 3 years into our Vision 2027 strategy, and there's a lot of initiatives we've checked off the list. And so now is actually a perfect time to update our generation plan, to update our Vision 2027 to a Vision 30, and keep our 5-year strategy fresh, right? So we will go through that process at the end of this year. Early next year, we'll get our board to put their fingerprints on it, and then we'll move forward. But it's dealing with operational evolution that we need to make our systems more resilient. It's retiring old plants and building or buying new plants. Part of that strategy. Our technology had to be upgraded. We're spending $300 million right now to upgrade our computer systems that are old and less effective, and will give our customers a better experience. Our customer experience is a big pillar of our strategy. And then you got to do all that in a financially resilient manner. So how we do we invest $1 billion to $1.5 billion a year, which is what our current pathway looks like for the next decade. We got to do that in a way that maintains the financial health of CPS Energy. And, I'll tell you, when you look at the list of all the things we've been able to accomplish, you can check boxes in every category, because what Vision 2027 did for us is it gave us a set of priorities. We're not doing anything else that doesn't support those key pillars of what we're trying to accomplish as an organization. And because of that, you can budget more efficiently, you can hold people accountable better, you can communicate to your customers in the way that you need to bring them along with you. And then you can talk to your board and city council when you need rate support about what's driving the need, right? So having a plan is fundamental to how you move the organization forward.
You know, I want to talk about I want you to explain to us the Horizon 2050, but I want to tell you a real quick story that just happened last night. I went to dinner at J. Alexander's in
one of my
the
favorite
Quarry.
restaurants. Yeah.
Well, you had a fan there, sir. His name was Joe, and he had a construction site that he had a contract with City Public Service in building out some of the power plants. And he, to hear him speak, I just want, as a third party listening, I said, well, how do you feel? And the compliments that he gave in the way of saying, it's got to be one of the best companies that we contract with. And he had contracts from all over the state of Texas. But he said that CPS, when you talk about your leadership and just doing the day-to-day operation, which has been primarily this show. But then I thought about Joe over here, who is a contractor, not an employee, but has to work and deal with the employees of CPS. And for him to have such a glowing report about how much he enjoys it, and then to think that you all are providing all these other hundreds of thousands of jobs to citizens to be able to work and make a living into servicing and helping CPS continue your mission and overall strategy. It says a lot about the company. And I love to see good companies running very strategic, but yet understanding that their people are the true assets, and then how they communicate with the community and they enjoy it, that they're complimenting you guys. So I wanted to share that story with you. He didn't know you personally, but he had a lot of great things to say about CPS. I just wanted to share that with you.
Well,
so I was like, wow, that's pretty cool.
On that point, let me just add, Kym, 70+% of our spend, on an annual basis goes to local companies. And of that 70+%, over 40% of that goes to small business. So I'm super proud of the fact that, it's not just a bullet point. Every dollar that comes into CPS Energy benefits the community in some way. And in large part, it's those suppliers and vendors that are doing work for us that are helping us get the job done every day. And we're real proud of that accomplishment.
And I thought it was worth sharing with you because I don't think you all get maybe that much feedback from the vendors that they have nothing to gain or hide, or this was a true testimony. And he had no idea who I was, and he had no idea that I'd be interviewing you today. So, and we're back. You're listening to the Energy Mixx Radio Show. My guest today is Rudy Garza, President and CEO of City Public Service Energy in San Antonio. Rudy, thank you for coming on and explaining what you guys are doing and how you're handling, ensuring that San Antonians, surrounding counties, and even the state of Texas has the energy needs, or you're certainly trying to work in that way to provide as much as we need. But through your leadership and running CPS, there's been changes. And one of them has been something that has launched. It's called Horizon 2050. What lessons have you learned about balancing community needs with infrastructure investment, and what is Horizon 2050? Can you explain it to us?
Well, so one of the main questions I get from business leaders around the community pretty much every week is, Rudy, do we have enough resources for the next 25 years? Business leaders are always thinking long term about economic development, and you can't grow the economy without water and energy and the inputs that you need to do all the great things that our customers do every day. So and it's been a trend. A lot of my colleagues right now around the country are doing longer range, and it's really not a plan. It's more of a roadmap. There are alternate versions of our future that exist depending upon what happens. Maybe a new technology comes up that's going to change our business, or, like data centers, that these large loads are going to be transformative for the amount of resources that we're going to need. I don't know, maybe someday competition comes to San Antonio, and that's going to be an alternate reality than where we're at today that exists for San Antonio, or something else. So we came up basically with 4 different versions of our future that basically allow us in those moments where you have kind of pivoting, points in the industry to at least have thought through what happens if this reality comes about, or what happens if these dynamics change in our business, and so we have a roadmap that says, hey, if competition does come to San Antonio someday, we're gonna pull that version of our future out, and we're gonna create a plan to help get us there. And so Horizon 2050 was really meant to answer, Rudy, what do we think about the future? Our business community is asking that question. And so Horizon 2050 was created really to be a roadmap to what the future could be, depending upon what variables end up happening. Some of them fall off. Probably every 5 years, we'll update that Horizon 2050 with whatever the reality of that time frame is, and we'll create some new realities that might exist for us down the road. But I think it's hard to wrap your head around any more than 3 or 4 different versions of the future that you think about. But it allows us to at least engage our customers in the fact that we're thinking about the future on a long-term basis. So we have our Vision 2027 that we're going to stretch to Vision 2030, and we have our Horizon 2050. So we have a short-term plan that supports our long-term vision for our business. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so that's going to lead me into, as we're closing out the show, we've got some time left. You were on the cover of SHALE Magazine, and there were some things in that interview that I learned about you. 2 things that came to mind, and I want to close out the show with that. First of all, understanding city of San Antonio, the majority of the population is Hispanic, and looking back and realizing that you have been you have been the first CEO of City Public Service. This is not in any way a negative towards City Public Service. This is actually a great, to me, opportunity and I think you've been showing it, that it took the right person to understand the culture, to come from here, to be a part of the city of San Antonio, to know the people, to be committed to the people. It shows, it's a testament into how you've come on board as interim, and not to mention you obviously have the seasoned, educational, but you also had so much background. How important do you think it is to you to be the first Hispanic? I mean, to me, it's huge. It is really important that I feel we stress that because of the city that we live in. I understand San Antonio culture. That was shocking to me, pleasantly shocking. I'm like, finally, and you are doing an amazing job. So maybe I'm not really asking you a question per se, but wanted to give you that information. But how much has this shaped you as being there now? What do you feel being the first Hispanic?
Well,
I know it's a hard question for you to probably answer, but you're so humble, but yet this is a big deal. You are really showing leadership and showing it's possible. In your interview with SHALE Magazine, you said you had never even thought about being the CEO till somebody mentored you. I mean, you are a great icon for the Hispanic culture to look to. If you can do it, go ahead. I'll be quiet because I'm just talking, but I want people to understand your story's great.
I appreciate the fact that you're a champion for Latino leadership in general, in the energy industry, because quite frankly, there's still not enough of us out there. I am proud to be the first, but I will tell you, my vision for CPS Energy, and really my vision for any business that serves, a set of customers. I think every business should be a reflection of their customer base to a certain extent. I mean, the fact is I was the first. What that means is there'll be another in the future, hopefully a Latina, leader of this organization down the road. But the fact is, now we kind of gotten over that hump. So now it won't be a thing, And I'm hopeful that even though being a Latino leader was kind of how I was ushered in to this job, I hope I've proven myself. And the fact that, that any of us can step into this, these types of roles that have prepared themselves for it. And if you've never been a CEO, you don't know how prepared you are until you step into the seat. And I came in and I just did what I thought was right for our customers. I tried to focus on my employees and give them the leadership that I thought that they needed in that moment. And they've rewarded me by following me. And that's the biggest compliment I could ever hope for. Is I know my community's proud of me because they tell me every day I'm a reflection of San Antonio. That young boy or girl out there. I've had students come to me and say, Rudy, I didn't realize a Latino could be, be the head of a CPS Energy. So you know what? The dream I didn't have now has been instilled in kids out there that see me doing what I do and be like, well, you know what? That can be me someday. I didn't think that way because I didn't see it, in the society I grew up in. But we're changing that one opportunity at a time. And the only way that it works is if we're successful when we step into these roles. And, and that's all I've ever cared about is I want CPS Energy to be successful, because if we're successful, San Antonio's successful. And that is all that matters to me. That I have no agenda other than to put my employees in the best chance they can to do their jobs.
So Rudy, last question before I let you go. Last question before I let you go. Are there any energy sources that you see that are going to be potentially something that you're looking at in the future of something that's not in your mix right now? As an example, maybe geothermal or these small nuclear reactors. What are you seeing that you like? Do you think has potential?
Yeah, I would love to get some geothermal capacity into our system, and we're kind of kicking over every rock to see what projects are out there that we'd be interested in. There's a company called QuidNet that we're doing a small pilot with that has some potential, but certainly geothermal, if we can make it work, is in the mix. I've already talked about small modular nuclear reactors and the future I think they're going to have in our industry, which I think is going to be significant. And then what I didn't talk about, and one of the reasons why we bought those Houston assets, Kym, is the hydrogen play. Those plants are on hydrogen infrastructure lines that we can feed into those plants and actually reduce our carbon footprint by blending our methane, fuel with hydrogen in the future. So I believe that there are all kinds of ways that hydrogen is going to have, work its way into the mix into the future. And that was another reason why those assets in Houston, around Houston, were so strategic for us, because we're really excited about the opportunity we have there for a hydrogen play. So all of those things are going to happen, and you never know. Our industry is changing right now. I like to say we're moving in 4 dimension. Everything's moving, and then the ground's moving beneath our feet. So I don't know what's going to happen 5 years down the road or what new technology is going to come. But I'll tell you, CPS Energy will be ready to make that pivot when the time comes, because, again, we're going to need it all.
Rudy, thank you so much for joining me. It's a pleasure to interview. I like what you're doing. Keep it up.
Yeah. Thank you, Kym. You keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.